Well, welcome everybody to another Discover Headless Tech interview by headlesscreator.com. I am Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. As always, there's my email address, marcelo@headlesscreator.com. Get a hold of me anytime, questions, comments, ideas for other episodes. You want to be interviewed, send me an email. I'll get you on the podcast. Today's conversation is going to be all about the atomic design system. So we're going to talk about what is that and how does that relate to a headless CMS and specifically to content modeling and content type. So we're going to talk all about that. And my guest that's going to enlighten us on that topic is Juan-Manuel Fluxa. He's a CTO or the CTO at Reign. And we're going to learn more about him in just a minute. But as always, you guys know how this works. I'm going to tell you really quick about headlesscreator.com. Go get your free account. For those of you that are listening on audio, obviously you can't see it. Just go to headlesscreator.com, click on sign up. You'll have your free account. You'll have access to this episode on demand after we're done with the live version. But you're going to have access to a whole bunch of other stuff, including a lot of courses. So you have access to Content Modeling Weekly. I have a lot of Headless CMS courses, many more coming up. Discover Headless Tech course, which is this one that also does the podcast. You'll learn a lot of stuff. We have a lot of stuff coming up on Jamstack. Just sign up, get it. It's 100% free. Thank you to all the sponsors that sponsor my site. I really appreciate your support. So, all right, that's it for the marketing. No more marketing. Just please go get your free account at headlesscreator.com. For those of you that already have an account, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having the account with us. So with that said, I do want to remind you that the on-demand version will be available in about an hour after we're done. It'll be available on my site and also on Apple Podcasts for the audio version. So that's that. And then the final thing I want to remind you about is we have a chat. Type in your questions there. I'll ask Juan-Manuel those questions as we have the conversation. So having said that, I'm going to bring in Juan-Manuel. Juan, there we go. There. How are you? Nice to see you. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me here. Yes, I'm very happy to be back here and with this new, live format. So it's great.
Yeah. And the reason it's back is because you were in my original podcast over a year ago that I had. And we spoke similar, but it wasn't about how it related to headless CMSs. Today, we're going to be talking about the atomic design system and how do we use that for content modeling. But we'll get to that in just a minute. Before we get started, give me a little bit of your background so we learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah. So, I'm CTO and co-founder at Reign. I graduated from engineering school. I became passionate about computers when I was kid, growing up with Atari and video games, consoles. I guess that led me to discover programming languages like BASIC at the age of 8 to 10, something like that. Then in the mid 90s, when the internet connections were accessible, I started learning HTML, JavaScript, and created first websites. But I guess my career as a developer really began when I learned ActionScript and Flash in the early 2000s.
Oh boy, Flash, that brings back memories.
Yeah, that was a big deal for me. And I think Flash, really defined what we know as today, the modern web. So yeah, it was great times.
Right. The only problem with Flash was it was horrible for SEO, but otherwise you could do a lot of stuff that you couldn't do with HTML, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
definitely. So what Atari did you play with? I had the 2600. Which one did you have?
I had the Atari 7600, I think it was.
Okay, so you were a little bit more, because you're younger than me, so I'm definitely older than you. So I started with the Atari 2600, playing Pong and Space Invaders and all those things.
Oh, yeah. I was, I grew up with all, the generations of Atari consoles and
sure.
I'm still a gamer, so
yeah. What was your first computer?
It was an XT 1899.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
a compatible probably.
Yeah,
an IBM.
Yeah, IBM. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's I think it was an 8086 processor back then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool. That brings back a lot of memories. So now you're the CTO of Rain. So real quick, a quick summary of what is Rain. What do you guys do?
So, well, we are like a software development company. We are based in Chile, and we design and ship digital products for big companies using nowadays like headless technologies like Contentful, Elastic Path, Algolia. We're focused on e-commerce, on discovery sites, and we do everything in-house. Yeah.
So you mentioned you're in Chile, South
Very Chile,
America,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So obviously, for those of you that don't know, actually, I'm actually from Argentina, and I have a Spanish version of this podcast too, which you can listen to. Maybe we'll get Juan-Manuel to come back for the Spanish version. We'll do another episode. But how is like Jamstack in Chile? Is it being adopted, and also how is Headless CMS? Are they adopting that technology or?
Yes, like like nowadays, like every company, it's a digital, company. So we're living like a transition time, like where lots of companies, like are having like specific pains with their current solutions, like based on like monolithic architectures, especially on the e-commerce side.
Right.
So we are helping them, to be more focused on the customer experience, so they can provide like better digital experience to their clients. So I think nowadays, more and more companies are, realizing that. As I said, like especially in the retail, industry, e-commerce, they are having hard times to delivering the quality digital experiences. They're using Magento, Salesforce, Vitex, etc. And we are like helping them to decouple the front ends, or building from scratch, headless solutions. Yeah.
So it's following the trend of the rest of the world, US, Europe, APAC, Latin America is pretty much following that trend with headless,
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah,
People migrating.
absolutely,
Yep,
absolutely, yeah.
definitely. All right, let's jump into the atomic design system. But real quick, before we jump into atomic design system, give a quick overview. What is a design system? Why is a design system important? How does a design system relate to web development?
Okay, so first of all, like a design system is like an organized set of like I could say like interconnected reusable components with like specific rules that make up like digital products. Okay, like nowadays, like every digital brand has a design system, like Material Design from Google, Uber design system, Apple Human Interface Guidelines. So they help in the creation and the product design and development. They make the process more efficient. They bring consistency. I would say like the positive thing about having a design system is that allows like products to scale, to be consistent and efficient, and also like they enable like collaborative work, yeah, which is very important.
But a design system is tied to a UX experience, right? As opposed to, or it's tied to code as well.
It's tied to everything nowadays. Like we're gonna talk about like atomic design, but a design system starts from the visual design, from the UX, and from the visual design. But
Yeah.
thanks to things like atomic design, we can take this design system into the whole workflow, like development and also like content. So
Right. I see.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So then let's now jump in. Now that we know what a design system is, what is atomic design system and what makes it special versus, you said, materials design and other kind of design systems out there?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, like atomic design, it's a methodology for creating a design system. It was created by a web developer called like Brad Frost, and it's founded on the idea of like chemistry and the composition of matter. Like like things in the universe are made up of a fixed set of atomic elements, and these elements are the building blocks of everything. So using these principles, like atomic design describes a method of breaking interfaces like visual design into small parts. Then you can use these parts to build back up like larger and reusable components. So how is it different from another design systems? I think the main difference is like the atomic design requires you to describe and organize every component on your design system, and it provides, this explicit order and hierarchy, which is very needed.
And it's interesting what you're saying, because as you were saying all of that, to me, that sounds exactly like structured content, right? You take a piece of blob text, you break it into components, and then use those components to rebuild that same piece of blob text that was before that you couldn't do anything with. But now you can, make it intelligent, add metadata, build relationships with it. So I'm starting to see how an atomic design system really does match perfectly with content modeling, right? And we're gonna get into the specifics of that. But tell us about the specifics of the atomic design system.
So atomic design systems, they have like 5 stages or like 5 elements, and which are like atoms, like molecules, organisms, templates, and pages. The atoms are the smallest, building blocks in our system. They are like elements that you cannot divide more without losing their basic functionality. Like, for example, like buttons, like input labels, checkboxes, icons, images, etc. Then we have the molecules, which are like combination of 2 or more atoms, and they made that like simple UI elements. For example, you can put together a text input and a button to create like a search form molecule. Okay. And then you are scaling up your system. You build organisms, which are like more complex parts of the user interface, and they are made up of like groups of another molecules and atoms. These are like what they build, like the functional parts of a page. For example, like navigation or sidebar, forms, pop-ups, etc. And up to here we have this analogy on like chemistry, but then you start building what is called in atomic design the templates, which are like groups of organisms, and they function together to create like page level objects. But this, we can see them as like the blueprints of our future finished page design, and they focus on the content structure and not in the content itself. For example, you can have in an e-commerce, you have a product detail page, which is a template, and then you can like reuse like many times the same template to create all the product details for your e-commerce. And then you have like the pages, which are like the final stage of the atomic design, and these are the instances of the templates where the placeholder content in the template is replaced with the real content.
I see. So if we're going to tie this to content modeling, which that's, what I'd love to do now, is Atom seems to be like fields or attributes of a content type, right? Am I getting this right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So then molecules become content types and organisms are full content models? Okay,
so there is a mix. Like you like atoms can be like fields, but you can also have a content type being an atom. Yeah, exactly. Like for example, like a simple like button, it's going to need a content type because you're going to have the CTA, label, and right. Yes, exactly, the CTA. So you need a content type to define that atom. But then for creating like more complex organisms, you are going to start like linking these other content types to each other to form, these more complex structures.
That's where the relationships come in between the content types, right?